welcome to another edition of the Free Will, Science, and Religion podcast. Yeah, it's kind of a long name. Anyway, today I'm going to talk a little about, I'm going to respond to a video. It's just about this idea of will and kind of a how does it happen way. And I guess that's sort of an interesting subject because people who tend to believe their brain is doing, tend to believe they tend to think they are doing something, that they inside of them, the little man inside of them, the little I'm a real person inside my personness. Yeah, well, they sort of get confused and not realize that you don't do anything. You is a bunch of reflexes. And yes, you will do what you do because of the way the reflexes react. Lots of little knee jerks, and I do mean jerks, inside of you. So anyway, let's play a little of this guy's videos. Antikantavad, Buddhist type, happy Buddhist. Yeah, he thinks that's the real Buddhism, is the life-affirming happy Buddhism. So it does make him a bit of a silly person. But let's play along. It's like the ethical Christian. What a joke. Yeah, sorry. The poor will be with you always. That's really a great line coming from the Savior. Yeah, that makes sense, huh? Never forgave Eve of her sins. Just keep cursing those women. Yeah, wow. Some God.
I want to move my left pinky. My left pinky is now moving. How did I do that? No, not from the outside.
Oh, no. There is no other. There's only one how did I do that. There is no inside answer, outside answer, left answer, right answer. Well, there's a right answer. There is a correct answer. Okay, and the how you did it is the why you did it. They happen to be the same answer. And you did it because you have little reflexive connections inside your brain, word associations, conceptions put together, and that's what made it happen. Okay, so there's reflexes going in, like when the stuff comes into you, right, it triggers stuff to happen, and then in kind of an automatic way based on what you've learned. So you have these ideas and themes that have been developing inside of you over the years, and those ideas and themes dominate your thought patterns, let's call them. But those are your strong reflexes. It might be called your intellectual memory, because I'm going to use another term, muscle memory, because that's what really goes out. What's going out when you move your pinky, well, that's that's years worth of learning you did to do that. And so basically, though, it's just now a triggered reflex. It's something your brain knows how to do really well. It's done it many times before, articulating fingers. And so your brain just has to pop the thought, move the finger. And the rest is all kind of quick and easy because your brain has done it before. And when it rides a road it's ridden before, it rides it really fast. But that's how we do the stuff we do. And we can see how takes us time to do anything. Everything we do happens pretty slow relative to the speed of light. 168,000 miles a second. That's how fast the universe is moving. And obviously we're moving a lot slower. So it takes a while for all the little knee jerks to knee jerk into each other. But that's how you did it. Yeah, I think we'll play some more, get to the root of the question.
You don't say the brain decides this and then shoots this message down, which causes the... No.
Yeah. That's all neurons. That's all it is. Okay, and they're asking gate kind of questions. If this and that, do this. That's the kind of thing they're doing. They're opening gates because you say the magic words alakazam. So a part of your brain says the magic words, a certain gate opens, that gets you to another gate, that gets you to another gate, and that gets you to another gate. And if all the gates get open, then you wiggle your finger. But that's all that's happening.
No.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm communicating with a being that doesn't have a nervous system that works anything remotely close to mine.
It really doesn't matter. I don't need to know how my nervous system works. I don't need to know how any of it works to realize that my brain is now composing the sentences I'm making. It's not making them out of the ether. It's not making them out of magic dust. It's not making them out of nothing. It's making them out of the something that I have become over many decades of existence.
Let's say it's just a giant gelatinous thingy.
Who cares? It doesn't change the fact. If it's asking questions, then it obviously has some knee-jerking going on. It obviously has words stored in its brain, and it has the capacity to recognize words, to have neural activity take place because of those words, and a result to pop out, a piece of toast to pop out. It makes something based on what comes in. What comes in creates an out, and what goes out is dependent on what goes in and what has gone in the past, and that's all there is. Yeah.
It wants to know this idea of manipulating in a precise way parts of your own body.
Yeah, well, whatever. You're not manipulating in a precise way parts of your own body, because there's no you. Your brain, okay, has learned over decades of time how to run the reflexive roads, and it's a memory. It's a learned process, and once it's learned, once it's been driven, it's driven regularly and efficiently. Not too many gates anymore. It's like it has a gate key. Now it can just zoom right through all the gates.
It wants to know how you do that. You're communicating with it, and it wants to know, how do you move your left finger, your left pinky?
Well, what happens is I have this guy was sitting in a cafe listening to Schopenhauer, and his brain was musing based on different stimulus coming in. And so he wandered, his brain, but the wandering is in a set world inside your own head, set ideas and concepts that you've thought about in the past, and some of those become dominant patterns of thinking. I have dominant patterns of thinking. I'll look for certain things, and then some days I'll look for something else, and some days I'll look for something else, and it all depends on how I woke up that morning and what I saw on the news, and lots of things will decide what patterns I see on a particular day. Whether I open my brain to, I can say the word memory, and as soon as I say the word memory, I'm all of a sudden 5 years old inside. I'm running some old 5-year-old memories or some 10-year-old memories or something like that's happening. But they're all triggered by a process, by a reflexive, this hits that, a set of dominoes. Your brain is just a bunch of dominoes, that all kinds of pathways, and that's fairly irritating. So anyway, I'll be back. Alright, I'm back. So let's play a little bit more.
How do we do it? Not scientifically explained from the outside, mind you. How do you actually do it from the inside? Now,
yeah, well, how do you do it from the inside? One part of your mind, your brain, has the idea. So you can ask me, well, how does your brain have the idea? That's a more interesting question, maybe, than how, once you have the idea, does it produce the reaction? It's a learned reflex. It's your brain practices this stuff. That's what practice sort of does, right? You practice shooting baskets, you get better and better at putting baskets in hoops. And that's just what your brain's doing with everything else. All your thoughts, all your ideas, your vocabulary, the way you speak, your sentences, it's practicing all this stuff all the time. And you get better at it. It improves the algorithm. I don't want to use a fancy word, but it improves the way it gets from point A to point C. It finds a way to avoid messing with B altogether.
Schopenhauer deals with this. He says, there's the will.
Right, so now we're to Schopenhauer, who he's saying is, Schopenhauer was this guy that you're just compelled by this will to live thing, survival, and Nietzsche was, you have some will to be the best or something. These are the competing will notions, and all these are ideas. Now, Schopenhauer apparently thought this will to live thing, or this will to procreate, was some sort of real thing, which it obviously isn't, in my opinion. The desire to procreate, to have children, has, I don't think, anything to do with native male psychology. And frankly, I don't even think women have any innate ability to understand that sex creates babies. I don't think they know that intuitively. So anyway, so I don't think there's any direct connection between these activities at all. So anyway, there's no will to procreate beyond the social conventions, keeping up with the Joneses, do it what everybody else is doing it, or yeah, you have some desire to play with immature things. Yeah, which might be a little perverted.
The will is acting on the human body.
The will is acting on the human body. Well, the body's acting on the mind also. The both of them. It's your brain is your chemistry. Your moods will be created by hormones and chemistry. So all of that changes the processing. It makes gates easy to open. It makes gates hard to open inside your brain. That's part of the mechanism. But the idea that it's just reflexes, it's just reflexes. Just like your knee jerk. If I shoot your knee full of Novocaine, the reflex isn't going to work anymore. And if I shoot your brain full of some drugs, it's not going to think too good no more.
It's when he gets to the why of it that I think he kind of loses the plot.
Yeah, I don't even think you know what I don't even think you know what a plot is, to tell you the truth. A plot is supposed to be the story, and it's supposed to be like the real story, not some story that doesn't have anything to do with the movie or the story. And I don't think you're anywhere near the story of life on Earth.
Goes for a bald assertion, which is that it's the will to live. Now, I understand I shouldn't really say it was a bald assertion, but he takes an educated guess and then treats it as a fact.
Well, look, it's all related to the fact that we're survival machines. That's what, so in that sense he had some insight, almost in a Darwinian sense, that ultimately everything we will desire is associated with this mechanism that is intended, by genetics, by the DNA's mandate, to replicate a molecule. And you have to replicate a molecule first by surviving, and then you have to thrive enough where you can actually maintain the existence of your offspring. And obviously you have to have incentive to create the offspring, which means you have to have this drive to copulate with the opposite sex. So all of those mechanisms do drive us substantially, and if you add in the ego element, which has to do with the hierarchical elements that create compulsion, that is dramatic in the sense that one male having a harem kind of idea, possession, aggressive collection, this would be the will to power. But all it is the incentive, the genetic incentives to dominate. That's how you get your genetic code into the future, is pretty much dominance is the way you do it.
I'll put it that way. An axiom becomes a fact in his world. He says it's the will to life.
Well, like I said, you're paraphrasing his axiom, and I would say if you're more accurate in describing his axiom, it's perfectly rational and proven scientifically, essentially by the theory of evolution and by the human genome and by inescapable logical implications of the process of evolution through natural selection. That's a fact of life. And if you reject that fact, you're rejecting it with nonsense. You're not rejecting it with anything evidentiary. You're rejecting it out of belligerence.
The will to exist and the will to reproduce. That's...
Yeah, well, again, I don't think those are Schopenhauer's words, but regardless, it really doesn't matter. It's wrong regardless. We have no will to reproduce. That's a lie. It's just not. You can't demonstrate that anywhere in any organism that has any will to reproduce. It has a will to copulate. Nature doesn't need to make you even understand reproduction. It just needs to make you do things that will create offspring. So when salmon are swimming upstream, they are not willing that they reproduce. I'm quite certain they have no clue what they're in for, which is miserable death.
What animates everything? Maybe. Schopenhauer.
It's just so obnoxious.
Or arrived at this, middle of the 19th century. Something similar seems to have happened in India, about 2,300 years earlier.
This is rather annoying. Okay, we're back again. So anyway, so now we're getting to the Buddhism now. So we're going from Schopenhauer, who had a lot more information, to now 2,000-year-old theories, 3,000, whatever, on what's the nature of life. And clearly some Buddhists came to the conclusion that life was rather preposterous, but they couldn't do much about those conclusions because they hadn't even invented, useful condoms. So they couldn't really separate themselves from these natural impulses or compulsions, and they seemed pretty much still trapped. And even though they might say life is preposterous, there wasn't much they could do about the fact that it was going to just keep on keeping on.
Where we got what are loosely called life-denying philosophies, Jainism and to a lesser extent Buddhism, and this is not a true characterization, by the way, of Jainism and Buddhism, but
yeah, I think it pretty much is. But regardless, whatever you want to say that the Buddhist style philosophies aren't a little bit negative in their perception of the living experience, and that's why they created nirvana to go to, and a way to escape existence by jumping into a fire. So I don't really think you could be very life affirming if you're suggesting to people, you know what, you can get the hell out of here if you jump in a fire. It sounds like when the exit door is that nasty, you must be running from something pretty nastier. But anyway, let's just pretend that the new Buddhism is let's paint rainbows on everything and pretend it's all alright. Okay, pretend that Buddhists lost its mind but got really stupid, and now it's just making excuses and rationalizations for every kind of preposterous nonsense that exists. Oh, fine, okay, you redo this. That's like the new Christianity, right? We love homosexuals, we love everybody, everybody's wonderful. Yeah, it has nothing to do with what's written in the Bible. But anyway, let's just ignore this revisionist Buddhism, and just maybe deal with this idea of optimism and pessimism and ideas and themes and philosophies and how we acquire them. They're just byproducts of something called logic for a lot of people. I would say for me personally, I attempt to be logical. If somebody presents me with evidence of something, well, it will have an impact on me, and I will tend to be obedient if facts are pointing explicitly and clearly in a direction of guilt or innocence, or this is a strong truth because it has lots of evidence behind it. I'm going to tend to be persuaded by that, and I'm going to tend to have a perception based on that. And so I could argue that I generally became a pessimist because the answers to the questions of why this happens, and why is this unfair, and why is that horrible, and why is the answers were all preposterous because it's God's will. Well, then God needs a will transplant because his will sucks. What the hell? These aren't, and there's no answers coming from the human civilization. There's just excuses for, it's the way nature is. Well, that's certainly not an answer to why we should accept it the way it is. It sticks tumors in little kids' brains. Well, that's the way it is. Oh, okay, I'm supposed to just say that's alright. No, well, logically I said, why should I say that's alright? Because you told me to say it's alright? Do I have a rational reason to say it's alright? No. The only reason why I could say it's alright is that I have to somehow be addicted. Alright, like sports or something. I could explain that football kills little kids and it paralyzes them, puts them in wheelchairs. Why are we doing that? Is the Super Bowl really worth it? Is the Super Bowl every year really worth paralyzing kids? It sure doesn't make any sense to me. But the people who love football, who are addicted to it, or football to lifing, or will to footballing, yeah, they just can't live without that because they have a compulsion inside their brain. They have programming that says football's everything, or almost everything, and they just can't live without it. So they'll rationalize, they'll make excuses for football killing little kids and paralyzing little kids. Just like other people will make excuses for life being preposterously crude, silly, stupid, where deserve has little or nothing to do with it, and say, yeah, it's a perfectly good game. Let's strap the kids into the chair and force them to play. Deserve will have nothing to do with it. Yeah, no, that's not really a good idea. So, let's see what he's got to say now.
On a continuum, these are fairly life-denying philosophies, or they can be.
See, this is just, yeah, right, recreate reality, yeah. So that's the easiest way to evade or fix a problem in reality is to pretend it doesn't exist. Just make up a different lie. Ugh.
Now that's 500 BC-ish, when Mahavira founded Jainism, although they say it wasn't him that did it, he was just the last one, the last of the Jinas. And when the Buddha came along and taught his philosophy.
And the Buddha was different how? Oh, that's right, he talked to Death, and Death explained, after a whole bunch of trials to make sure Buddha was honorable, trying to seduce him out of wanting to know the truth. The big ultimate truth was, yeah, if you jump in a fire, everything will be okay. Of course, everything won't be okay. You see, you just escape having to come back as a mealworm, and eat some more humus. Yeah, you escape being a maggot in the future, but all the other maggots are stuck being maggots. So yeah, it doesn't really solve much of a problem if you really care about anybody else on planet Earth. If you care about the other consciousnesses, you jumping in the fire is not going to do them any good. So yeah, that's what he learned from having a conversation with Death. So all religions, even the ones that don't have a silly god, are silly. Buddhism is silly.
Well, in India, about, 500 years later, and it sort of peaked about 500 years after that. In other words, 1,000 years after the Buddha.
Yeah, and that's about 10,000 years before toilet paper. I mean, really, these, come on, why are we even having conversations about what people thought before they even had done the Benjamin Franklin thing and had any understanding of electricity? They didn't understand thunder. They didn't understand weather. They didn't understand microbes. They didn't understand disease transmission. Why are we having conversations about life through their eyes? Just a question.
And Mahavira, Buddhism and Jainism. It was the movement which has come to us as Tantra, which says you can use your will.
Okay, so right there we have it, right? You can use your will. No, that means your will can will. That's all you're saying there. Okay, some element of your psychological attachments and passions, some element of the sentences and words you've placed together in some kind of way that you say, I love the way that sounds. The will to life, or, ooh, the will to power. Oh, that sounds like something. So your brain has made it into something, just like your brain makes music into something. Because it strikes some little chords, these little gates that are inside of you that might be the little when you were 10 years old, you got an emotional trauma, and this will somehow comfort one of those little traumas, and so this becomes an attaching or comforting idea somehow. Just because of the way the words sound. They sound like an old lullaby, or it sounds familiar, or it looks like an old black and white movie that you enjoyed. And those things just keep sticking to each other, like like static electricity. Each one has a little bit of a gravity, and more stuff starts sticking to those kind of things, and they become bigger blobs in your brain. And so you have this big blob in your brain of some kind of Eastern enlightenment, and you think that, oh yeah, that's the way to go. They all had this X-ray vision thing, and it could see right through all the horror and evil and get right to the root of it, which was me wanting to eat cheesy. Yeah, he's a cheese eater. Anyway, yeah, I don't think so. Okay, your brain is just a collection of reflexes, a collection of learned, cascading words, symbols, representations of things, and you have attached to them either gnarly, spikes or soft pillow.
You can control your will. Now, this doesn't mean that your will is free. It just means that you can channel that which wills. Schopenhauer kind of falls down when he says, in my opinion, he falls down when he says you can't will what you will. You can't decide what it is that you're going to want. I don't know about that.
Sorry, I had to look for some stuff. You can't will what you want. Again, you aren't a you. You are your wills. You are your desires. Your desires are your compulsions, your attachments, your addictions. These are your will. You cannot control them with your controlling. Okay, you can only control them with competing desires. Other desires. I desire to be good. I rationally find out to be good probably means not imposing life on some victim for which you cannot control what might happen to them. I can logically understand it's not good to play Frankenstein. I've seen Frankenstein movies. It always ends badly. Yeah, don't play Frankenstein. So I can have competing ideas. I can have the idea that me wanted little Gary to play with, and I can have the understanding that little Gary might be Frankenstein. Okay, he might go through the world, in pain, and might find nothing but disaster everywhere he went. Might find his finger on fire. These are competing understandings, they're competing incentives. So if you have developed a sense of understanding that part of my ego isn't just collecting women, but part of my ego would be being considered a good person, being considered the things that people admire, being admirable, and then you might even learn that even a step higher than that is understanding that it doesn't even matter what people think of you, it just matters whether you have satisfied conditions of goodness, which are not causing badness. Yeah, it's really, man, is that a complex reflex to understand, that I would have a reflex in my brain that might be able to understand that good would be not causing bad? I mean, how many neurons should that take? 4? I mean, come on. But yeah, once you unlock that gate, I mean, once you put the little silly key in and turn that one, your brain, in terms of figuring out that that's logical, that causing bad will make you bad, gee, doesn't it get kind of obvious? That road has got to be really easy to pave. I mean, that's a pretty straight line from here to action. From thought to action is pretty clear when you understand that, oh, I just eliminate all the part that causes harm, and then I'm winning. Yeah, easy.
That's kind of what occupied my thinking. And you ever get a thought stuck in your head while you're reading, and you can read several pages without actually paying attention to what you're reading because you're...
Yeah, well, you said previously he wasn't even reading these books. He's just listening to them. It's a little harder to do that when you're listening to a book, but okay. Grant you it is possible, but whatever. What's your point?
Mind is actually somewhere else. That happens to me a lot. And I was listening to The World as Will and Representation, and I kind of went off the map a bit there because I had one of these fascinating synchronicities or serendipities when...
Oh, yeah, whatever. Doopily doopities or gobbly goopities or mippity pippities or zippity dippities. I mean, yeah, so this is, this is really intelligent conversation. So you're going to critique Schopenhauer and then say something like serendipities. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Everything sort of clicked together in one place. I'm trying to understand why Schopenhauer arrived at the conclusion that he did, and I think...
Yeah, I don't think you have I don't think he has a clue. But anyway, maybe we'll do a part 2. Maybe next time, maybe some other time. And get to this whole, why did Schopenhauer think life was stupid? Well, I think he thought it was stupid because it is stupid. It's a lot of horror and waste for absolutely nothing. Shakespeare knew that. Everybody, they all knew it. Come on, all the greats knew it. It's only the less than greats who can't figure it out. Yeah, I mean, life is just a piece of crap. Yeah, it's a piece of shit, but I didn't want to say shit. But it's a piece of shit when you look at it. Look, Monty Python knew the truth. You don't need Buddha. Anyway, I think we're about out of time. So that's it. Till next time and such. Thanks for listening and such.